Welcome, everybody, to Crossing the Line with Greg Heym, where we dig into the latest news on the economy, housing, and this week, Cookie Monster. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Today is March 11th, and it's our 16th episode, our Sweet 16. Yes, I'm going to try to come up with a reference for every number. I already have 17, 18, and 19 ready to go.
We're keeping it nice and
gimmicky. We had a dozen. We had a baker's dozen.
We did.
So we got to keep coming up with things. I am Greg Heym. No one else would claim to be, I'm sure. Chief economist at Brown Harris Stevens and author of The Line, a weekly economics and housing blog, which is the basis for this show. Special welcome to any new listeners out there. Always make sure to like and subscribe. The other great podcasts as well on the More Network, but like and subscribe this one first, then get to the other ones. I'll trust you that you'll do them all. Today we have Hannah and Ray and Lena behind the scenes here in beautiful Studio 1873. And there's two things that make it beautiful. One is it's right outside my office. That is beautiful. And two is our friends at the Everset, who have this great decor in here, making us look nice. And as always, trying to be informative, concise, entertaining, edgy, and maybe shocking. I don't know. At the same time, questions, feedback, praise, hate, whatever you want to tell us, ctl@bhsusa.com.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
So, good weekend, Hannah?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I saw a great concert on Friday night, Bachman Turner Overdrive. Actually, it should have just been called Bachman Overdrive because Fred Turner apparently doesn't really tour with them anymore. But my wife was concerned. She's like, am I going to know any of these songs? But all they did all night was play BTO and Guess Who songs. So you're hearing Taking Care of Business, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, These Eyes, American Woman, No Time,
Classics.
No Sugar Tonight, She's Coming Down. Yeah, it was an awesome night. Randy Bachman should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a joke that a guy who's part of two bands that iconic doesn't get the love. Maybe it's because he's Canadian, I don't know. Although they put Neil Young in. Anyhow, welcome, and hope you guys had a good weekend. The rain was pretty atrocious on Saturday. After Wednesday's rain, I was at the Paramount seeing Jim Brewer on Saturday, and just walking back to the car, I almost drowned.
It was an absolute monsoon.
It was terrible, but no rain today, just a lot of sun and wind. So
yes,
I guess it's the way to dry up all the rain, so to speak. All right, so as always, we'll start with our line items, and there's really 1.5 items in this one. What was the big one this past week, Hannah?
Well, February jobs report, and then we had some positive news on mortgage rates, but you can start with the jobs report.
Right. Well, jobs report is the most watched bit of data these days, obviously having to deal with what the Fed may do when they might cut rates. Stop sending me emails, people saying they're going to cut in June. That's nonsense. They're not going to do it. But another month, another better than expected gain in employment, 275,000 jobs created in February. You know why? Because that's the month of my birthday, so it's the best month.
Mine as well.
Right, so, we're special people. Although this was a leap year, so maybe that extra day had a lot to do with that job increase. But the 275,000 number was much higher than the 198,000 Wall Street was looking for. So that's good news. The unemployment rate rose to 3.9%. It was expected to stay at 3.7%. You want to talk about if that's concerning, but one thing that does sound scary when you say it is even 3.9% is a 2-year high for the unemployment rate. It's still incredibly low, but these are the kind of things where if you're looking for something negative or something to be concerned about, that could be it. Wages ticked up 0.1% last month, not a big gain, and were 4.3% higher than a year ago. As we've mentioned before, every month when they release these reports, they have to revise the prior couple of months' numbers. And the revisions they made to January and December subtracted 167,000 jobs. So if you want to look at it that way, it's really only about 100,000 gain last month if we want to account for the takeaways from the prior 2 months' data. The labor force participation rate, that's the percentage of Americans that are of working age that are either working or looking, people in the workforce actively, held at 62.5% for the third straight month. Now, two questions. Is that a good number or a bad number? And then why is that important? Well, it's not a great number because it's still about 1% lower than pre-pandemic levels. What we want to see is more people in the labor force because there are still a lot of jobs out there. And we'll get to that number in a minute. Basically, this is what we call a mixed bag of good news and bad news. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? You know, those of you who want Fed rate cuts probably want to be pessimistic and look at what are the concerning points of this report. Me, that's all sunshine and rainbows, right, Hannah?
All the time, 24/7.
That's what I'm. And unicorns.
So you're known for
unicorns. I'm all about that. No, we just try to be honest around here. So why don't we look at some of the data points we talked about and go a little deeper and try to suss out, as they like to say, what's concerning, what isn't concerning. And all right, we'll start with the headline number. It's good news that we added 275,000 jobs, better than forecast. That's never a bad thing. But when you have these big revisions downward of the prior 2 months, you wouldn't be crazy to say, well, is this number going to be revised down? Are they rushing? Because, you know, these numbers are collected. They have to be released very early, usually the first Friday of the month, although since the first Friday of the month was March 1st, they released it last Friday. You know, in that rush, things get missed. And you know, we do it here with our reports. We always revise data in our reports because people, you know, start to respond late and you get information or you make changes to certain things. But one of the concerns about that number that didn't really get talked about is that all of the job growth was in part-time workers. Now, why is the question? Why this big surge in part-time at the expense of full-time? Well, I heard a couple theories about. One being people are getting second jobs, a part-time job, because of the inflation that's been, you know, crushing the American consumer the last couple of years. You know, they need more money to make ends meet. That could be part of it. I also saw a discussion about the fact that many small businesses and restaurants are hiring part-time workers because of the minimum wage increases that have taken effect over the last couple of years. It just makes more financial sense to them. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. Usually, you wouldn't take that as a great sign that your job growth is coming from part-time. That shows you that businesses also may be unsure of the future and don't want to commit to hiring full-time workers. You have to pay benefits too. You know, again, everything is more expensive. So the next thing would be the unemployment rate. Again, I mentioned it. If you hit a 2-year high in the unemployment rate, you start to get worried until you realize it's still under 4%. But that being said, we hear so many announcements about layoffs. You know, the Wall Street Journal had a long list of it a couple of weeks ago. And it sounds scary when you look at it, and these are big companies that are talking about this. And then there is the aptly named challenger, Gray, and Christmas. Would it be funny to point out that or would it be cruel to point out that the company known for telling us how many layoffs to expect is named Challenger, Gray, and Christmas? Especially Christmas is a time when layoffs tend to happen. So they said the number of layoffs that were announced in February was the most layoffs in a February since February of 2009. And you may remember February 2009 as the worst of the financial crisis, you know. But we keep hearing, and we talk about this all the time, layoffs this, layoffs that, nobody's hiring. But there's, you know, one part of that doesn't fit, and that's the fact that claims for unemployment are still incredibly low. The last numbers we had, 217,000, unchanged from the prior week. That doesn't, you know, usually you would have to get closer to 300,000 before you were really worried about the labor market. And we've talked about the reasons why people may not be filing. Maybe they get generous severance. They're finding other jobs quickly.
That's interesting to think about.
Well, we also point out, and we'll talk about job openings in a minute, that, it's strange. It is strange to hear nothing but layoff talk all day long, not see any people applying for unemployment, and still seeing almost 9 million available jobs out there. It makes you feel like something is not adding up here, or maybe more than one thing. And we always like to point out that these numbers are from two surveys. There's the payroll or establishment survey, where they basically reach out to companies and they ask how many people are working there. And that's what gives us that employment number. How many jobs added or subtracted each month comes from the payroll survey. It's a very large survey. Then we have the household survey, which is what gives us the unemployment rate. The household survey is basically calling people up and saying, are you working? And if you're not working, they'll ask you, are you looking for work? Because you're not unemployed if you're not looking. If you've decided to retire, you don't feel like working, or stay at home with a child, whatever, you're not counted in that number. So but the household survey does calculate job growth as well. We don't use that number because, again, it's based on a much smaller sample. But here's the interesting thing, Hannah. The household survey is basically looking at the individual. Are you, Hannah, working? Right? So if you had a part-time job, you would only be counted once in the household survey.
Okay.
In the payroll survey, you might be counted twice.
Interesting.
Because it's two different jobs, two different companies. The household survey is known for capturing startups better because they're not on the Department of Labor's radar until they've been around a while, established, start hiring people. But anyhow, the household survey, now remember, payroll survey, 275,000 jobs added last month. The household survey showed a decline of 184,000. Worth pointing out again, these surveys don't always show the same thing. Again, based on different things, one much larger than the other. Just throwing it out there is a sign of concern. It's certainly not a happy sign that it's declining. But again, we go by the payroll survey because it's much bigger and much more reliable. Wages. Now, it's good that wages are growing faster than prices because we can all remember when that wasn't the case, when prices were rising almost 9% year over year. But, good wage growth and wages growing faster than prices has its upside and its downside. The upside is good for the workers, They can better afford things, maybe pay off some debt. Purchasing power is increasing. That's all good. But it's not so good for the fight against inflation. The people, more money chasing not enough goods. That's what you worried about. But the annual wage rate, the growth in wages is actually falling, as is inflation. So that's we want to see that get back down a little bit. We don't want to see people not getting raises, but kind of cool a little bit, hiring cool a little bit, and then we'll feel a lot better. But it's just another sign that the labor market is cooling. We have this increasing unemployment rate. Job growth is still looking really phenomenal, but also wages coming down, so that even with the demand for workers being strong, wages aren't turning around and shooting up again. And the labor force participation rate, again, we harp on this because it still hasn't got back to its pandemic level. Maybe there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, aging population, maybe people don't want to re-enter the workforce. A lot of people are saying with all the COVID relief that was sent out, a lot of people didn't need to work, so that was sort of interesting. But regardless of all of this layoff talk, the latest JOLTS report, Job Opportunity and Labor Turnover Survey, still 8.9 million jobs out there. So, and that equates to 1.4 jobs for each person looking for one. I can remember when it was over 2 jobs. So it's changed a little bit, but it's still it's still plentiful out there. Again, I know a lot of people are going to say that doesn't make any sense, and I'll agree with you. But let's get to what is really important. What does all this mean? Well, the broadest way I can put it is, while it's not as strong as it used to be, the labor market's still running pretty hot. You're adding over 250,000 jobs in a month. You're running hot. Your unemployment rate's below 4%. You're running hot. Wages growing faster than prices. You're running hot. But think about it. The big things driving everything here is strong hiring, low unemployment rate, and almost 9 million available jobs. Put that in an equation, that equals big, strong, healthy labor market. But all those three things that we just mentioned there, the strong hiring, low unemployment rate, and available jobs, are not as strong as they used to be. Still very strong, but not as so. That is the good news for inflation and mortgage rates. So if you sum that all up, I think we are heading towards the Fed's soft landing. It looks that way. You can never rule out a recession, but I don't think we have to worry about inflation turning around and going in the wrong direction unless the Fed starts cutting rates. And they shouldn't. They have a meeting this month. They're not going to do it then. I think it's fourth quarter of the year, if I had to pinpoint it. But just remember, the Fed does not have to cut the short-term rate that they control for mortgage rates to go down. They do not move directly in the same direction at the same pace. By getting inflation down, we will bring long-term rates down. Whether or not the Fed cuts the overnight rate, and that will help people with variable rate loans. It'll help people with credit card rate loans, and they certainly need help. But it doesn't directly impact mortgage rates. So, and that goes to what you mentioned also was our other small, like, dessert thing in the line, which was that for the first time in 5 weeks, mortgage rates declined. That's been what's been hurting real estate activity. We saw a nice drop at the end of last year in rates. Rates have been rising this year. Hopefully, now we'll start like a streak of rate cuts. Wall Street was didn't know what to think about the jobs report, but some other stocks, Nvidia being one of them, spooked the market, and that led to a down week for all three indexes. But again, as we said, prepare for choppy weeks for Wall Street. We have two big releases this week. We got CPI, and his little brother, PPI. Yes.
My favorite reference that you make there.
Now
it's catchy.
I'm a little brother because I have two older brothers, I guess, but I'm more important than them. So that's the important thing to remember. And retail sales. Retail sales is very important. Consumer spending is the biggest part of our economy. So, again, like we say every week, depending on what CPI and retail sales show, because PPI really doesn't get any love, we could see rates going up or down, but isn't that the way it works every week? That's not news. Well, that was our line items, but now we have to take a quick break, right? As we have a message from our sponsor, the Everset.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
And we're back. Love doing that. Great to have sponsors. Well, it's time for the lineup. And Hannah, we only have one item, but it is so special that we could spend a long time
it would
talking
stand out even if we had more than one. So a popular topic of discussion right now is something called shrinkflation. Of course, you've heard of it, correct?
As an economist, yes. We've invented more types of inflation in the last couple of years than in the history of economics.
So before I get into this item, just to define it for those that haven't heard of this, although I doubt it because it's everywhere, it's basically a reduction in the size or quantity of a product without the price reflecting a reduction as well. So it's shrinkflation.
Right.
Okay. Very punny. Okay. So, I mean, we're not the only ones that are upset about this.
We're not?
No, we're not. Cookie Monster, the beloved member of Sesame Street, used his Twitter to voice his complaint.
Now, who lets Cookie Monster on X? Like, who thinks that's a good idea?
I'm his friends
I'm
on Sesame Street. Big Bird,
but
Elmo.
so Cookie Monster decided to jump in on this,
right? And basically said that he needs to eat double the cookies now.
Well, you got to do it in the Cookie Monster voice.
You go ahead.
Me hate shrinkflation.
There it is.
Me cookies are getting smaller. Those are the direct quoes.
There it is.
And who can argue with that?
Yeah.
I can't. What's that demonic? Yeah, now cooking. Well, you shrink his cookies, and all bets are off with Cookie Monster. I mean, come on, the guy's addicted to cookies, and all of a sudden he's got to take more. It's bad.
Well, yeah, and sorry, I just can't get that out of my head. That's going to haunt me. I don't remember him being so evil, but
it's hard to get the raspiness and the deepness of the voice. I can't be that silly. I always related to Oscar the Grouch, like that was.
Yes, I could see that.
Yeah, my wife and someone be like, yeah, that's you to a T. But everybody likes Cookie Monster. But
well, in response to this, not to the tweet, but just in response to shrinkflation, there was a proposed Shrinkflation Prevention Act, which would give the Federal Trade Commission and the state's Attorney General authority to punish the companies that are participating in this.
Yeah, and this is crazy. So, the White House took advantage of this, as anybody would, because it's great PR.
Why not?
Cookie Monster is agreeing with you. It's funny. I would have thought Cookie Monster would have been more upset when they were trying to turn him into the Veggie Monster. Remember that? They were going to.
I do.
I would have thought that would have tipped him off more. He would have hit social media long before that. But, and you mentioned, what shrinkflation is. And the thing that really is upsetting to consumers is, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that Americans are spending more of their disposable income on food. And this really relates to food probably more than anything than they have in 30 years.
Right.
So that's a problem. So in case you're wondering, according to AARP, these are the 7 types of products hit most by shrinkflation. Toilet paper, it's easy. Just put less sheets in the roll, right? Paper towels, same thing. Breakfast cereal. Who looks at how much is in the box? Usually,
well,
when I was a kid,
you
look
feel
there.
the difference.
Is there a toy in there? Like, that's what I cared about. Laundry detergent.
Okay.
Snacks, obviously very easy to shave off a couple ounces there.
Yep.
Shampoo and conditioner, 2 things I don't buy a lot of, in case you didn't notice. And yogurt. Less yogurt. And so the White House jumped in and said on Twitter and said, quotes, C is for consumers getting ripped off.
Yeah, I liked that.
That's good enough for me, as Cookie Monster would say. And like you said, there's this new bill that's been introduced by Senators Warren and Casey to prevent this. President Biden even mentioned it in his State of the Union, and obviously, very critical that people are being ripped off. And it's a good political topic to have, because who can argue with it?
I mean, it's very noticeable. Like, especially with like the snacks, it's like the packaging is visually smaller. It's not just like the quantity. I mean, it's like everything is
smaller
very
packaging
noticeable.
Also costs them less.
Yeah,
I think it's like it's kind of like the reverse of when you go to like a BJ's or a Costco. Like, you have to look at the price per item or price per ounce. Not how many boxes you're buying. And then most people, it's hard because everything is more expensive at the supermarket, and all those things I mentioned people can buy at the supermarket. And you look and you go, I guess everything. You don't realize the double whammy is that you're getting less of things, and that is a problem. But it is really funny that the Cookie Monster got dragged into this. And look, I wouldn't want to upset him. He'll come eat your cookies. He leaves a mess everywhere he goes. It's crazy, and I think that people have been, one of the things that has come out of this, going back to when the inflation really started to get ugly, was are companies price gouging. Now that's hard to prove when there are shortages of things, which there were, but if they're shrinking it and charging the same, that is very easy to prove. So
For sure.
obviously, a lot of the people that represent these industries are saying, oh, we were happy to meet with whomever and try to work this out. So let's stop shrinking. The only shrinking we should have is when we put the wrong things in the dryer. That's it. And shrinking the national debt. That's another thing
that's some
should
good
do,
shrinkage.
Because that's just blowing up too. But, well, that's the show for this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and we enjoy doing this every week. And please send those comments coming. Like and subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts. You're going to see me on one of the other podcasts in the coming days, because we do shameless cross-promotion around here. Look, NBC used to do it all the time. Even Fox did a Simpsons Family Guy crossover episode.
Correct.
Why can't I cross over? We've done it with Vince.
Why can't you cross the line?
If I don't, what am I here for? I mean, let's be honest. I don't get to do it enough. But we'll have some interesting data again. We'll have CPI and we'll have retail sales, and who knows what else for next week. So make sure you tune in and have a great week, everybody.